Hi! In this lesson, we're going to explore how we can make our programs interactive and tackle more advanced formulas. In our first lesson, we use an online program to determine how much time we would have to wait for $20,000 to grow into $1 million, compounding twice a year at 5%. The absolutely essential part of this program working for us was being able to enter in our own values. Without that ability, this program wouldn't be of much use. So let's talk about how we can incorporate a user's input into our programs. Introducing the input function. The input function prompts the user to enter a response. To write it in Python, we type input in the prompt we want the user to see. The string inside the function is the prompt. When I run this, you'll see the prompt, and the program is waiting for the user to enter a response. More often than not, we want to store the response in a variable to be able to use the response later in the program. A couple important points about the input function. The user response is stored in the variable as a string. We need to use the int or float function to convert the string into a number if desired. So what are the int and float functions? The int and float functions are essentially the opposite of the string function. They convert a string value into an integer or float number. Remember, a float is an integer with a decimal value. With this program, I'm prompting the user to enter the number of cups used in a recipe in order to convert to tablespoons. As written, a string is stored in cups, since that's the default input, and the print statement will produce an error. Remember, you can't perform arithmetic with a string. By incorporating the int function, this now converts the user response, which is a string, into an integer before storing it in the cups variable. Now, when I run this, if the user enters 2 cups, the output will be 32 tablespoons. Likewise with the float function. If the user enters 1.2, the value will be stored as a float, and the resulting output will also be a float, which is 19.2 tablespoons. Let's head over to the live editor to see how these will work in our programs. In this example, we will incorporate user input to convert a given number of cups into tablespoons. To get input from a user, we use the input function and then store it in a variable to use it later in our program. For example, we can ask the user for their name by writing input, and then in the parentheses, we write a prompt. We should also store the response from the user in a variable, so let's assign this to a variable called name. To test to see if this is working, let's print the name variable. When I run the code, I'm prompted to enter a name. And as expected, it prints the user input, which was Carol. Okay, so now let's ask the user to enter the number of cups they'd like to convert into tablespoons. We can do this by first writing cups to store the user response, and then use the input function to prompt the user. By default, input values are strings, so the input for cups needs to be converted into an integer or float to allow us to calculate the number of tablespoons in a cup. For this problem, we can assume that the user will likely type in a decimal number sometimes, so let's convert this into a float. So to do that, we write float, and then we put our input statement between the parentheses. There are 16 tablespoons in a cup, so to calculate the number of tablespoons, we can write tablespoons equals cups times 16. Okay. Let's print the results to see if this is working as expected. Okay, so now I enter my name. I enter the number of cups. Let's go with 1, because 1 times 16 is 16. And as expected, we get 16.0. Great! We can also make our print statement more descriptive, so we can add more strings and information to it. So we can write there are, and because we're trying to convert strings and a number value in our print statement, we have to be sure to convert our number values back into strings. We can do this by using the string function. So we're going to write there are however many tablespoons in, and then we're going to write the number of cups. So again, using the string function. Cups. Great. So let's rerun the program. I enter a name. I enter the number of cups. And now it reads, there are 16 tablespoons in 1 cup. So you can write cup or cups. Great. Now it's your turn to explore this example.